I found my husband's bucket list 3 years after our divorce, and the worst part wasn't what was written inside it. The worst part was realizing every single item began with the same 4 words: now that I'm free. I wasn't supposed to find it. At least I don't think I was. The discovery happened completely by accident. I had returned to our old house to help sort through some paperwork after Noah's mother passed away. Despite everything that had happened between us, I'd stayed on good terms with his family. Not close, not exactly friends, but cordial. The kind of relationship people settle into when enough time has passed that anger no longer feels useful. Most of the afternoon was spent digging through boxes in the attic: tax records, photo albums, old warranties, the usual collection of things people save because they're afraid they'll need them someday. Near the back of a shelf, I found a small leather notebook. Nothing special. No lock, no label, just a worn brown cover. I almost tossed it into the donation pile without opening it. Then I saw Noah's handwriting. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened the notebook. The first page contained a title: Bucket List. I smiled. For a moment, I expected something nostalgic. Maybe a list we'd created together years earlier. Dream vacations, retirement plans, things we'd once talked about doing as a couple. Instead, I turned the page and immediately felt my stomach tighten. The first item read, now that I'm free, I want to learn how to play guitar. Below it, now that I'm free, I want to visit Scotland. Another, now that I'm free, I want to take a train across the country. Then another, now that I'm free, I want to spend an entire Saturday reading without feeling guilty. I stopped reading. The phrase repeated over and over again, page after page, item after item, always beginning the same way. Now that I'm free. Now that I'm free. Now that I'm free. The words felt personal. Not because Noah had written them, because I knew exactly what they implied. And for the first time in years, I wondered if I'd misunderstood our marriage completely. When Noah and I divorced, I assumed I was the one escaping. That was the story I'd told myself. I wasn't happy. I wanted more. I wanted excitement, adventure, passion. So I left. Simple. At least that's how I remembered it. But sitting in that attic, holding the notebook in my hands, I found myself questioning everything. Because people don't write lists like that unless they've been waiting. Waiting a long time. I continued reading. The items grew more personal. Now that I'm free, I want to stop apologizing for things that aren't my fault. Now that I'm free, I want to spend Christmas somewhere warm. Now that I'm free, I want to buy furniture I actually like. Now that I'm free, I want to stop pretending I enjoy parties. I laughed softly at that one. Noah hated parties. I knew that. He went because I wanted to go, because I enjoyed them, because being social mattered to me. I'd never considered the possibility that every event felt like an obligation to him. The notebook suddenly felt less like a bucket list and more like a confession. A record of all the compromises he'd quietly collected over the years. And the more I read, the worse I felt. Not because the list was cruel. It wasn't. There wasn't a single negative word about me. No bitterness, no blame, no accusations, just things he wanted. Things he'd postponed, things he'd abandoned, things he'd sacrificed. Somewhere around page 15, I found an entry that stopped me cold. Now that I'm free, I want to find out who I am when nobody needs anything from me. I read it 3 times, then a fourth, because suddenly the notebook wasn't about travel or hobbies anymore. It was about exhaustion, the kind of exhaustion that accumulates slowly, year after year, compromise after compromise, until someone forgets what they actually wanted in the first place. I closed the notebook, then opened it again, because part of me didn't want to continue, and another part desperately needed to. Near the back, the entries became more recent. The handwriting looked different, lighter somehow, more confident. The items were crossed off one by one. Learn guitar? Done. Visit Scotland? Done. Take train trip? Done. Spend Christmas in Arizona? Done. Each checkmark felt strangely emotional, like evidence. Proof that Noah hadn't just survived the divorce. He'd built something afterward. A life. A real one. The kind of life we'd always promised ourselves we'd create together. Except he'd done it without me. I reached the final pages. Most of the list had been completed. Only a handful of items remained. Then I saw the very last entry. Unlike everything else, it wasn't crossed out. It wasn't even written in the same format. No, now that I'm free. No destination. No activity. No goal. Just one sentence. Learn how to stop feeling guilty for being happy. I stared at those words for a long time. Long enough that I lost track of time completely. Because suddenly I understood something I'd spent years avoiding. The divorce hadn't been a tragedy for Noah. At least not forever. It had been a beginning. The same way it had been for me. The difference was that I'd spent years measuring my happiness against what I'd lost. Noah had spent those years building something new. Eventually, I put the notebook away. I didn't tell anyone I found it. It felt too personal, too honest, like reading someone's diary. But the notebook stayed with me, not physically, mentally. Especially that final sentence. Learn how to stop feeling guilty for being happy. Months later, I saw Noah at a family gathering. The first time we'd been in the same room in almost a year. He looked good. Healthy. Relaxed. The same way he always seemed to look whenever our paths crossed. For most of the evening, we stayed on opposite sides of the room. Then eventually, we ended up standing near the dessert table together. The conversation was easy, comfortable, almost familiar. Then before I could stop myself, I asked, "Did you ever learn guitar?" Noah blinked, surprised, then laughed. A little. The answer confirmed everything. He knew exactly which notebook I'd found. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he smiled. Scotland was amazing, by the way. I laughed. I heard. Another pause. Then I asked the question I'd been carrying for months. Was marriage really that bad? Noah's smile faded slightly. Not in anger, just thoughtfulness. He took his time answering. No. The response surprised me. No? He shook his head. Our marriage wasn't bad. I waited. Then he continued. But I spent a lot of years living a life that didn't fit me very well. The honesty hurt. Mostly because I understood exactly what he meant. After a moment, Noah added something else. And that's not your fault. I looked away. Because part of me wanted him to blame me. Blame felt simpler, cleaner. Instead, he offered understanding, which somehow felt heavier. Then he shrugged. Sometimes two good people build a life that works on paper. I nodded slowly. And? He smiled. And sometimes that's not enough. The conversation drifted elsewhere after that. Nothing dramatic, nothing emotional, just two people discussing weather and family and travel plans. Normal things. Yet as I watched Noah walk away later that evening, I found myself thinking about that notebook one last time. For years after the divorce, I believed I was the one who had escaped. The one who had chosen freedom. The one who had started over. But maybe we'd both escaped. Maybe we'd both started over. Maybe we'd both spent years trying to become people we'd forgotten how to be. The difference was that Noah had written it down. One small sentence at a time. Page after page. A quiet reminder that freedom isn't always about leaving someone. Sometimes it's about finally becoming yourself again. And standing there in that crowded room, I realized the bucket list had never really been about Scotland, or trains, or guitars. It was about permission. Permission to stop living a life that no longer felt like your own. And for the first time since our divorce, I genuinely hoped he'd finish every item on the list.